Today we're going to learn how to write an equation in point-slope form. So these are your notes for today, and you can follow along while I go over them. You can pause and try the examples on your own and then play the video again to check. So point-slope form tells you a point on the line and the slope of a line. So it's written up here in this generic format: y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. M is a slope like it was in slope-intercept form, and x1 and y1 is just a coordinate of any point on the line. Just like we had in slope-intercept form, the y that's first and the x that's first over here are going to just remain in the equation. So there's an example over here. Because there's subtraction signs in the equation, that means that you're going to use the opposite of the x and y value from your point when you put them into the equation. So if you look at this example, the slope here is -1. And we have chosen the point down here 3, -2. You could choose any point, that's just the point that we chose. So when you put it in the equation, you're going to put the y value after y, so it's y minus -2, which turns into the +2. Then you're going to put the -1 for the slope, and then you're going to do x minus 3. So if you notice, because we have those two negatives after y, what happens in the equation is that it's y plus 2, which is the opposite of the -2 in the coordinate, and x minus 3, which is the opposite of the +3 in the coordinate. You can write -1, or you can also just write negative. So in order to write an equation in point-slope form, you need the slope, which you'll replace m with, and you need one point on the line. You're going to replace x1 and y1 with the opposite of the x and y coordinates. So in this first example, it gives you a point, 4, 3, and a slope of +2. So it's always useful to write out the formula first for point-slope form. And then you're just going to replace x and y and the slope. So here's your x and your y value. Make sure you note that the y value is the second one. So since it's +3, we're going to write -3. The slope here is +2. That's what they told us. And since the y value is the x value is +4, we're going to write -4. So the equation here is just y minus 3 equals 2 times x minus 4. And you leave it just like that, because then when you look at it, you can say, hey, the slope is 2, and the coordinate is the opposite here, which is +4, and the opposite here, which is +3. Okay, here's another example. You try this one, pause the video, and then come back and check. All right, let's try this one. So again, write out your formula. For point-slope form, you do need to be familiar with this formula. The point that we have here is 7, -1. So again, we're going to take the opposite. So we're going to do y plus 1. The slope here they told us was -6. And then we're going to do x minus 7. So the point-slope form here is y plus 1 equals -6 times x minus 7. So make sure you have all that written down and correct, and then we'll go on to the next example. All right, down here for example 3, now I'm going to show you how to write an equation if you are given a graph. So again, remember, for point-slope form, I'm going to write it up here. This is your generic formula. So you need to know the slope, m, and you need one point on the line. It really doesn't matter which point on the line, but if it tells you, then you should use the one that they give you. In this example, it says to use the right-hand point, which is this point right here, which is 1, 1. So we're going to go ahead and use that one. In order to find the slope from a graph, you guys know that we need to draw a slope triangle. I know this is a pretty tiny graph here, but the slope there is -1 because you have 2 spaces here and 2 spaces here. So the slope is -1. And so you're just going to fill that in, and you're going to say y minus 1. You're going to do the opposite, is equal to -1 times x minus 1. Again, here in front of x, you could just put a negative sign if you wanted. So go ahead and try the example that's next to it, and then pause the video and come back to check. Okay, so for this one, it tells you to use the right-hand point again, which is 2, 4, and you need to calculate the slope. So calculating the slope of this line, so the slope here is 3/1. I know it's a little small, so the slope is +3, and the point they asked us to use was 2, 4. So again, I'm going to write 1, and I'm going to do the opposite of the y coordinate, so -4 is equal to the slope 3 times x, and then do the opposite of the x coordinate, x minus 2. All right, the other way that you might have to do these sometimes is sometimes they just give you 2 points, but you already know that if you have 2 points, you can calculate the slope. So remember I told you that that slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if you're given 2 points, the first thing you should always do is calculate slope, and then you can use either point to write the equation. In this set of notes, it actually tells you to use the first point. In Delta Math, it should take either one of the points, which is what you're doing today. So for example 4, we're going to first start by calculating the slope. So we're going to subtract the y values, and so we're going to do -3 minus 3 for the y values on top, and then we're going to do 1 minus -2 for the x values on the bottom. So that gives me -6 over +3, and so my slope on example 4 is -2, and they tell me to use this first point right here, which is -2, 3. So I'm going to go back to my generic formula, which I have written at the top of my screen. I'm going to do y, I'm going to do the opposite of the y value, which is -3, is equal to -2 times x. I'm going to do the opposite of the x value, which is going to be +2, and so this becomes my equation. Y minus 3 equals -2 times x plus 2. All right, you try the second one, pause it, and then come back and check your work. All right, so we are going to use the slope formula again here. I'm going to write it up here this time. M is going to equal, and I'm going to do 2 minus 4 for the y values. And then I'm going to do -1 minus -5. Remember we talked about that it's subtracting it, so you have to make sure all those negatives stay. So 2 minus 4 is -2, and then -1 minus -5 is +4, so my slope is -1/2. There's a little negative sign there. And then again, it says to use the first point, which is -5, 4. So I'm going to start with my equation. I'm going to do y, and I'm going to do the opposite of +4, which is -4, and that is equal to -1/2 times, and then we're going to do x, and we're going to do the opposite of the x coordinate, which is going to be +5. So your answer, my parentheses got a little mixed up, is y minus 4 equals -1/2 times x plus 5. Again, you could use the other point, but it told us to use the first one. All right, make sure you have all this written down and correct, and this would be very helpful for you to have out while you're doing your Delta Math today. Have a great day.